Hello, welcome back. Welcome to another video. If you're new around here, my name is Pippa, and today, a little bit of a random one, but I hope this video is going to be helpful because I want to share how I create a personal survival budget and how you can do the same thing. A lot of the conversations that people with chronic illness have, people with my level of chronic illness, around that middling sort of mark where you're not severely ill, but you have to do life differently to make it work for you. And a lot of people in that boat are thinking, I maybe want to move out one day and live independently, or I want to work, but I don't know whether I can earn enough in a job to cover the cost of living, especially in the current crisis. And although I definitely can't claim to have all the answers to that, I thought I could just maybe share how I personally go about creating a personal survival budget and how doing so can help you to get a more concrete idea of what sort of outgoings you will have. Because once you have that initial figure, moving out or getting a job stops being this abstract thing that potentially might happen in the future, and you can actually look at that figure and feel like you've got something to work towards and somewhere to start that search. So if you've never heard the term personal survival budget before, it's essentially a master list of all of your outgoing costs within a certain period of time, and that will give you a cumulative total of how much you're going to spend in a particular period. And I say a particular period because most examples of personal survival budgets that you find online do this on a weekly basis. But for reasons that we'll go into, I choose to do mine on a monthly basis. So I look at my outgoing costs for the total of a month rather than the total of a week. If I can figure out how to do this and how to make this work, I will create a template and I will link that somewhere where you can download it for free. Don't hold me to it, but if I've managed to do it, there will be a link to that below. And yeah, in this video, I'm going to run through my personal survival budget and I'm going to include the things that you might not necessarily find on a typical template, but something that's inclusive of all of the extra costs and extra considerations of chronic illness and disability too. That said, there might be other additional costs of disability that I haven't thought of or that are relevant to you, so just consider this a guideline because you will know better than anybody what you need to consider in each of these areas. And the other thing that you'll see that's slightly different with mine is that I focus just on the things that are necessary for me to survive. I don't budget a lot for leisure purposes or extras or recreational or shopping activities. Again, we'll go into that. It is something that you might find on traditional ones, but yeah, like I said, for reasons we'll go into, that's not something I choose to include on mine. Oh yeah, and just to say, don't panic when you see the figure you've come up with at the end because we will talk about that as well. But let's just get into it for now. So first of all, I would advise having your rent/mortgage costs at the very, very top. That's probably going to be your biggest, if not one of your biggest outgoings. So even if you haven't moved out yet, you can tend to get a rough idea of what these rates are in your local area by looking on housing sites like Rightmove. If you don't have the experience of moving out yet, you can do a little bit of desk-based research. So even if you don't have that cost yet, I'd recommend estimating it. Another biggie on a similar note is your council tax. This is again a very big sum, but I will say if you are in a single person household like I am, don't forget that you can get a 25% discount on your council tax, and that does take it down. I was going to say significantly, maybe not significantly, but it does take it down an amount that makes it worth doing. Definitely, definitely. Gas and electricity bills, that's very self-explanatory. I wish it didn't cost the earth for these very essential things, but such are the times we're living in. And you could put water rates on that one as well, or you could do it separately. So your household bills, I suppose. It's not a cost-saving measure as such, but I do always recommend signing up to your local priority services register. I bang on about it all the time, but if you're living with any kind of disability or long-term illness, the priority services register is just this free thing that you can sign up for, and it means that in an emergency, the companies will know to prioritise you and to be considerate of the fact that you might have additional needs. So it might be that they try and restore your power first in a power cut. Sometimes if you have a water shortage, is that the right word? When your water stops working, they can sometimes deliver bottled water if being hydrated is a medical necessity for you. It's definitely worth looking into. Personal and property insurance is something to consider. This is probably the area I'm least savvy in, and it's something I'm trying to navigate myself. I do have home insurance. I'm self-employed and I'm currently weighing up the benefits of having income insurance, whether that's something I want to invest in or whether the money would be better put into savings instead. If you happen to be watching this and you're also self-employed and you have a chronic illness, if you have any experience of that or any thoughts on that, I would actually find it really helpful to hear. Yeah, just on personal and property insurance, don't forget to use comparison sites to check you're getting the best deal. You might have to factor in things like health insurance or warranty for mobility aids. That's usually a hidden cost that people don't think about in advance. You might need to get insurance or warranty for your power chair, for example. So research that or make a note of how much that is costing you as well, because that's important to factor in. Phone and broadband, nice and easy one. I have both of mine in the same package, so that might just be one line for you, or you could choose to do them separately. Food, now this is a very subjective one for people with chronic illness. It might be that you have to follow a particular diet or have certain foods, and the unfortunate fact of the matter is that sometimes these come with a heavier price tag. One of the reasons I don't do a weekly personal survival budget is because I actually don't do a food shop weekly. It's just me. A lot of the food I have preserves well, so I don't need to do a weekly one most of the time. I'd say it's usually every 10 days. So if you're also going for a monthly overall figure like I did, just put in an estimate of how much you're likely to spend within the total of that month. And if you are booking home deliveries or you're utilising Deliveroo or other delivery services, don't forget to factor in the cost of delivery as well. Even if it's only a couple of pounds, factoring it in is really important. Housekeeping is a label that tends to be used, and my understanding is that this refers to things like everyday household items that you have to repurchase. So things like cleaning products, bin bags, hand paper, kitchen roll, that's the word I was looking for. I found it quite hard to estimate this one, so I researched how much the average household spends, and the figure I got was apparently the average UK household spends £2.70 a week on housekeeping products. I definitely don't spend that. That would work out at about £10 a month, but I wouldn't be surprised if you're a single person household if that's lower. I definitely think mine is lower. This next one is disability/chronic illness specific, and that is your support worker or PA hours. Now, it might be that you get these things funded through your local authority, or it might be that you have to fund them yourself. For me personally, I no longer qualify for social support of that nature, and I am quite lucky in that I can do a lot of things myself, but what I do now is I employ a PA for 1 hour a week, because truthfully that's all I can kind of make work with my budget at the minute. But yeah, she comes for an hour a week and she does the jobs that I struggle to do myself. So that is a cost to factor in there. It might be more or less for you. If your disability means that you have to pay for specialist therapies or private physio, for example, it might make sense to put the cost of that in with this one too. Prescriptions, so this is what you're paying for repeat prescriptions per month. Don't forget that if you're getting more than 3 prescriptions per month, you would probably be financially better off by getting an NHS PPC certificate, a prescription prepayment certificate. Again, it's a cost, and I get mine annually, and I always resent that money going out of my bank account. It makes me sad that I have to spend money on something that I wish I didn't have to spend money on. But if you are getting 3 or more prescriptions a month, even paying for that prescription prepayment certificate one-off will save you money in the longer term. Pain relief, oh good times. It's kind of a similar thing actually. I resent that I have to spend money on this, but I do regularly buy things for pain relief. This will be very different for everybody, but for me it's usually things like over-the-counter painkillers, heat pads, cooling pads. It might be that you need batteries for noise-cancelling headphones, magnesium salts or Epsom salts for your baths. It's a good idea to take some time to figure out how much you're roughly spending on that in that given time, because those costs can really mount up as well. Similar thing but different category, I would also put supplements on there. So any routine vitamins that you're having to take on a daily basis that you have to purchase yourself, if they're not a prescription, for example. There might be other regular things you have to buy for your condition management. So if you're one of the fellow people with ME who has eye problems, you might need to often buy eye drops, maybe ear drops, stuff like that. Just think of it as like the stuff you need for your body to have an MOT, the stuff you're buying regularly as a healthcare need. Now, I said at the start that I tend to only include the absolutely essential costs for survival, but I do agree with the other models that are out there that subscriptions should go on here, just because it's hard to imagine life without those entertainment subscriptions. So that could be things like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, the things you watch on TV. It might be Spotify Premium, which is what I personally use, and let me tell you, I definitely get my value for money with that, so I'm okay with that. Yeah, anything you're subscribed to. It might be that you're subscribed to the premium version of an app that helps you with rest or mindfulness. So personally, I would put subscriptions in there, but it's up to you whether you see that as an essential and whether you would want to put that on your own. Transport. Now, this won't be relevant for everybody with a chronic illness. It is the case that some people can't leave the house or can very rarely leave the house, in which case I probably wouldn't include it. But if you are able to leave the house with a certain level of regularity, although goodness knows it's very hard to have any kind of regularity when you're dealing with an energy limiting condition, but if you drive, you've obviously got the costs of a car, you've got your petrol, you've got your road tax. Sorry for the slightly watery eyes, I've just had a very, very attractive coughing fit, but we're all good now, still alive, still going. Yeah, if you don't drive, you might rely on public transport, in which case it's the cost of your bus tickets, your Oyster card. It might be that you can get a free or concessionary bus pass because of your disability, so that's worth checking with your local authority. My free bus pass is actually one of the only things I'm entitled to, and that's definitely saved me a lot of money. And for me personally, again, because of my chronic illness, I do factor in the cost of getting a couple of taxis per month, usually for days when I'm not using mobility aids, but I can't navigate public transport and the amount of walking and standing involved. If you're in a similar situation to me, I do think it's worth budgeting for a couple of taxis because you never know when you're going to need them. Debts and loans, you might want to put a bit of money aside to make sure that you're continually contributing or paying off these things if you have them. I include this one because I know a lot of people do have to borrow money or contribute towards the cost of a mobility aid, so I do think that by putting regular money aside for that, it's a really good way of making sure that you keep on top of things. On mine, I have national insurance payments. These are not something that everybody has to pay. If you're in employment, my understanding is you don't have to worry about these things, but if, like me, you're self-employed, you can choose to make contributions to your national insurance payments. And in the future, if you were to need social support or you were to get a pension one day, you do need to have reached a minimum threshold for contributing to those national insurance payments. My understanding of it is quite weak, so it's definitely something I'm prioritising, and I'm actively putting money aside to make sure that I can do that and I don't fall behind in the future. Now, the last thing on there you might see as debatable, and I probably would have seen it as debatable once upon a time, but I do have an emergency fund, and I put the costs of contributing to that emergency fund as part of my personal survival budget because I do think it's important to keep growing that fund. And what I mean by an emergency fund is essentially a pot of money that you know is there in the case of a crisis. And I'm not going to go into it too much, but I have had reason to draw upon that pot of money in the last year or so, and it was really, really helpful to be able to take out what I needed without going into my savings. And when you live with a disability or a chronic illness, the sad fact of the matter is that you are more likely to need to spend additional money in the case of an emergency. There are many adjustments and things we require in difficult circumstances to cope and to manage as well as possible. So my personal recommendation would be to start establishing an emergency fund, and if possible, because I appreciate it won't be possible for everybody, I would establish that as something separate to your savings, for instance. So that's the things that I include on mine, but like I said earlier, you might choose to put leisure time and recreational activities in there too. It might be that you're at a point with chronic illness where you can do these things regularly, so you might want to give yourself a budget, whether weekly or monthly, to spend on these things. So going out for meals, going to the cinema. It is really important to put money aside and to invest in you and do fun things for you. I know it's easier said than done in these current times, but I don't think anybody should ever feel guilty for setting money specifically aside to do the things that bring you joy. And even if it's not going out and socialising, it might just be things like clothes or books, which is, when I have disposable income, you can probably guess what it usually goes on. Yeah, to be really transparent with you, I don't put these things in my personal survival budget because I don't always have the disposable income to do them. Being self-employed with a chronic illness is hard, especially when you can't work full time. It's not always possible, and so for me, I don't really see that as a necessary cost for survival, because I know that if I don't have the funds, I can manage. I'm okay. I'm an introvert. I've learned to be very happy in my own company and to find the joy where I can. So that's that's a negotiable thing for me, but I appreciate it won't be for everybody. So you've gone through your spreadsheet, you've written down all your costs for all these things, and you've added them up and you've got a final figure. And the chances are you're going to look at that final figure and you're going to panic. But please don't panic. Like I said, I'm definitely not an expert in this area and I don't have a magic solution. It really, really saddens me that there are all these additional costs to disability, especially when the cost of living is so high as it is. Something I would recommend doing, I am absolutely not qualified to have an opinion here because I barely understand it myself and I'm not entitled to anything, but I'd recommend using an online benefits calculator like Turn to Us to check that you're applying for or receiving all the different social support that you're entitled to. There are certain benefits that aren't means tested, so whether you're hoping to go into work or living independently, it's really worth putting time aside to do your research into those things. Similarly, if you think the figure seems overwhelming or impossible, I'd recommend contacting your local citizens advice or maybe local advocacy groups. Sometimes there are grants or pots of money to help people from marginalised backgrounds to take that first step forward. There are also lots of smaller things you can do to manage your money and to make your money go further. Maybe that's something we can talk about more another time, and I know that that in itself is absolutely not a solution and it's not going to address the massive disparity and the massive financial struggles that a lot of people are experiencing. But especially if you're in this transition stage and you're hoping to move out or you're hoping to get a job, I do think it's worth saving all the pennies you can. Yeah, all the way through thinking about this, I've been thinking, is this even going to be helpful? Because I know that financial matters are something that a lot of people are worried about at the minute, and it's not a solution, but it's what I personally do to try and make the best of what I have. And one of the reasons I wanted to film this now is I'm actually re-looking at and re-evaluating my own personal survival budget. For a lot of reasons, I do need to be saving more than I am at the minute, which means cutting down on costs when I can, at a time when all the costs are going up and your money doesn't go as far as it used to. So it's definitely a new balance that I need to find as well. I hope it's somewhat helpful. I hope it makes those sort of ambiguous ideas of doing the things you want to do, I hope that it makes them seem more realistic. Again, even if that figure feels big and scary right now, I hope it at least gives you a starting place to start thinking about these things. Like I said, if I have managed to find a way to create a template, I will link to that below. I'll create it as a free downloadable resource. It'll probably be on my website. I'll see what I can do. But yeah, if there's anything else in this area you feel would be helpful to talk about or maybe to go into more depth, do let me know, because it might be I can do that in the future. It might be that this isn't helpful at all, but just pick out bits that might be helpful and feel free to just get rid of the rest. Even though there are lots of additional challenges we have to navigate, I hope that you do feel excited and optimistic about whatever step you're taking next. I will keep everything crossed that it becomes a reality for you, because it's what you deserve. But for now, I will just say thank you very much for watching. You can subscribe if you want, and I'll see you next time.